energy management is a critical part of setting boundaries. And I didn't say notice the people and the places that drain you and then cut them off. I don't necessarily think that that's the answer. Depending on your role in life, you may find that a lot of people and places drain you. And most of the relationships in your life are pulling on you rather than giving to you. But no matter who you are, most of us can almost neatly divide the world into drainers and replenishers. And I don't want you to think that's negative, because like in my life right now, I am both a drainer and a replenisher. There are people in my life that I drain because I need them to feed into me. That doesn't make me a bad person. It makes me human. But then there's a whole bunch, thousands, that I'm also replenishing. Hey friends, thanks so much for tuning into this episode of the Flourishing podcast. We're going to continue talking a little bit about boundaries. As you probably know, we've been spending a bit of time talking about boundaries. And the reason we're doing this is because, actually there's some survey data that shows that about 78% of people are intending this year to work on their boundaries. This is actually pretty interesting to me. I'm not sure what the other 22% are doing. Maybe they've got perfect boundaries already. But the rest of us, 78%, actually have identified that their boundaries need work. And so I want to share some thoughts about that today. I want to talk about the top 5 or the 5 most important skills when it comes to setting boundaries. Now, boundaries help you define what you're comfortable with, how you want to be treated. It's just that simple. What are you comfortable with? And you have a right to that. You also have absolutely the right to determine how you want it to be treated. And, this doesn't just apply like with your romantic relationships or with your partner. I actually think that this applies in every area. I think it applies with your kids. I think it applies with your parents. I think it applies with your brothers. I think it applies with your sisters. I think boundaries apply when it comes to the workplace. I think it applies when it comes to business. I think that boundaries apply when it comes to your career. I think it applies when it comes to you as an entrepreneur. I think it applies to your friends and, frankly, even your enemies. And social media, absolutely, boundaries. You got to determine, and again, what are boundaries? They help you define what you're comfortable with and how you want to be treated. And in all of those areas that I just shared, we have to sit down and figure out our boundaries. Now, the truth is that boundaries are hard to set and they're hard to keep. And they don't fix things overnight. Let me say that again. They're hard to set. They really are. But not only are they hard to set, they're also hard to keep. And then even once you've set them and when you're trying to keep them, it's not like boundaries are the cure-all. But what they do allow you to do is to set a framework for the relationship to thrive. Without boundaries, what ends up happening is you'll just treat me however you feel like treating me, and I'll sort of treat you however I feel like treating you. And if neither of us has educated each other on how we want to be treated, well, obviously we're not setting the relationship up for success. I'm dating. I'm not dating now. I was dating my wife before she became my wife. We've been married together now for 13 years, and when we were dating, that was the boundary setting time. She was teaching me how she wants to be treated. And I remember having some tough conversations with her where I had violated boundaries and where I was just ignorant to her culture, to the way she wanted to be spoken to. And when she set those boundaries, then the choice was on me. Do I want to set the relationship up for success by honoring her boundaries? So she set the relationship up for success by saying, Abe, this is what I need from you. That gave me then the chance to not be ignorant, to not plead. Well, I just didn't know. Of course, she wanted a relationship with me, but she had to set up for success by communicating. But then the choice was on me. What am I going to do with it? And obviously, here we are 13 years later, and it's not that I'm perfect or she is, but it's an ongoing conversation where the template has been set. We respect each other's boundaries. We want to work together on respecting each other's boundaries. And it's an ongoing process because as you go through different stages of life or different stages in career, or maybe as a parent or as a mom or as a dad or whatever, of course, those things flex and they flow and they adjust and they adapt. But the conversation is constantly around how can we support each other. And so boundaries, I think, really are about self-care. it's really tough for me to have a relationship with somebody who doesn't care enough about me to try to figure out how to connect with me and how to relate with me. And yet, really, should I put that all on them? Like they're supposed to, close their eyes and just do some mind reading and guess how I want to be treated. No. Part of my own self-care is identifying my boundaries and then having, the courage to communicate that. You see, I think that real self-care is not about like bubble baths or yoga retreats or going out and buying yourself a big bottle of red wine. I mean, not that those things are necessarily bad, but I think that real self-care is about getting grounded in your values. I think it's about treating yourself with self-compassion. I think it's about stepping into your power. And I do think that real self-care is about setting boundaries. Because if I want the relationship with you and you want the relationship with me, be it in business or career or life, then we owe it to each other to care for ourselves enough to identify, understand, communicate our boundaries one to the other. And so I just want to share with you what I call the top 5 most important skills for setting boundaries. The first one is that you've got to know your personal boundaries. You got to know them. And again, I like to think about this as a dashboard. All of us are going through life and we kind of have this internal dashboard, whether you know it or not. You have things going on internally. And the question is not, do you have a dashboard? The question is, are you in tune with your dashboard? When people say things to you, when they treat you a certain way, when they act a certain way around you, are you aware of how you're responding? Are you aware of how you're thinking? Are you aware of what's being triggered inside you? Are you aware that what they're saying might make you hungry? It might make you angry. It might make you lonely. It might make you tired. Are you aware that what other people are saying is helping you to feel empowered and healthy and strong and capable? Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living. And I think what he was trying to get at is that we're not just beasts like running around driven by instinct. I have all these emotions and these thoughts and I don't know what to do with it. That's not a healthy way to live, friends. Like if you got unplugged from social media for a couple of months or a couple of years to get back to your own heart, then that would be my recommendation. You don't need to tap into social media and find out what everyone else is thinking. How about sometimes we just unplug and find out what we're thinking? And so the first skill for setting boundaries is you've got to know your own personal boundaries, to do the work that it takes to understand them. But then I think the second skill, and this one here is really closely aligned, because when I know and I'm aware of my own personal boundaries, now I need to do the second step, which is to ground myself as preparation for maintaining healthy boundaries. Okay, so I have got to stay grounded. I've got to do the heart work to keep myself in a place of mental and emotional health. Now, people, sometimes you hear these terms, like what does it mean to ground yourself? When I was a kid growing up, my mom would say, you're grounded. And that wasn't a good thing. It was like, I was restricted movements for the next month or the next year. But grounding yourself is not that. Think about a tree. And a tree, what does the tree do? It digs its roots deep. And I live in Canada, and it's interesting because right now our trees have leaves on them, because I'm filming this in June, and June of 2024. And interestingly, probably in 5 months from now, 6 months from now, we're going to be in our fall. And the leaves change color. It's really interesting as the life kind of drains out of them. So the tree reads the seasons, knows the time. And what happens is the tree stops allocating energy to the leaves and starts allocating energy to the roots. And it digs its roots deeper because winter is coming. And I don't need actually these leaves, really. At this point, they look nice, but if I'm going to survive the winter, I can't keep feeding them. I got to let them go, and I got to dig my roots deep. Now, in the winter of your life, in the hard moments of your existence, in those moments where it is tough And, listen, I live in Canada, man. It gets cold here. Minus 30 degrees Celsius sometimes, minus 35, minus 40 degrees Celsius. And it's a beautiful country, but it's a cold freaking country, and you can't survive in the winter if you do the same thing you did in the summer. In the summer, right now I can walk around with shorts on, and t-shirt, flip-flops. Life is good. You try that in minus 35. You're going to lose some toes. Like literally, you're going to lose some toes. It's called frostbite. Like you will not survive. And so the tree knows that. The tree knows that. Trees have wisdom. So they go deep. And so, again, like I think a lot of us, when it comes to boundaries, we're so externally focused. You violated my boundaries. You triggered me. You did this, you did that. Okay, all right. But have you gone deep? Are you being like that tree? I actually think that when it comes to my boundaries, I've got to tap into my root system, my roots, okay? And a lot of, us, we think about our roots, we think like culture, which, absolutely, sure. Okay, great. Religion, sure, whatever. But now that like I'm a fully grown adult, I recognize that my culture has shaped me and maybe my faith has shaped me. I hope those things have, but not all of it may have been good. And some of it may have been bad. And so I've got to build my own root system. I've got to do my own grounding. And so for me, like I get grounded with prayer. I get grounded with running. I get grounded with meditation. I get grounded with even journaling. Like I have to have a daily process, like the tree is digging his roots deeper. I need to do that for me. Now, just because those things work for me, I don't want you to assume that they have to work for you. But what I would encourage you to do is to really think, number one, I got to identify those boundaries. But number two, I've got to get grounded. And that is about going a little bit deeper than you might be used to going. We believe that everyone should have the opportunity to work in a flourishing workplace. For so many, the workplace drains them and drags them down, rather than being a place where everyone belongs, everyone is valued, and everyone thrives. When you have a workplace like that, not only will it be positive, productive, and profitable, but you will be contributing to the mental health and well-being of every single person on your team. At Flourishing Workplace, we are changing the world by changing the workplace. Book a discovery call today and find out how we can help you create a workplace where everyone belongs, everyone is valued, and everyone thrives. Now, the third thing about setting boundaries, the third skill, is to notice the people and the places that tend to drain you. Now, this is really, really important. Energy management is a critical part of setting boundaries. And I didn't say notice the people and the places that drain you and then cut them off. I don't necessarily think that that's the answer. Depending on your role in life, you may find that a lot of people and places drain you because maybe you're in a role of leadership, or maybe you're a counselor, or maybe you're a social worker, maybe you're a coach, maybe you're a nurse. And most of the relationships in your life are pulling on you rather than giving to you. But no matter who you are, most of us can almost neatly divide the world into drainers and replenishers. And I don't want you to think that's negative. Because like in my life right now, I am both a drainer and a replenisher. There are people in my life that I drain because I need them to feed into me. That doesn't make me a bad person. It makes me human. But then there's a whole bunch, thousands, that I'm also replenishing. And what I have to do is be mature enough and wise enough to notice what drains versus what replenishes, and then make sure that I don't surround myself with all the people who and situations that are draining me. Because if I do, I'm not going to have any energy left. And when it comes to boundaries, energy is really a part and parcel of the whole conversation. And so, I want you to really think strategically. It's not that you divide like your friend group into winners and losers. That's not what I'm saying. But some of your friend group are draining you. They're not bad people. They need you. They need you. You are providing something important for them, but others are replenishing you. So you got to make sure that you get your ratios right. If like 100% are draining you and you don't have any replenishers, then that's a recipe for burnout. That's a recipe for overwhelm. That's a recipe for, at some point, you losing your marbles. And you don't want to lose your marbles, right? And so, don't get judgy about this. And please don't run around to your friends and saying, you're a drainer. Don't do that. Like, that's not nice, But have the awareness to know, who's draining you, who's replenishing you, and then set your ratios up. Now, you could say, well, what ratio should I use? Well, I don't know. You gotta figure that out. I know in my life, there was a time when I probably needed 3 or 4 replenishers for every 1 drainer. That's where I was at. I wasn't in a strong place. I wasn't in a healthy place. But now, I probably say that, that ratio is completely flipped. Most of the people in my life are more on the draining side. They're not bad people at all. My role is to replenish them. That's my calling. I feel good about that. But if it's 100% drainers and no replenishers, then I'm just not being wise. And so that's the third skill for setting boundaries. The fourth, I think, is to communicate your boundaries clearly, professionally, and with kindness. Just because you are setting boundaries does not mean you need to be mean. And as a matter of fact, I heard it once said from a person far wiser than me that you can conquer them with kindness. I love that. I love the idea of conquering people with kindness, not with meanness, not with, threats, not with, I'm going to cancel you. I'm going to judge you. I'm going to make you pay for this. No, like what is that? Sounds a lot like primitive humanity to me. How about you go out there, if somebody's violating your boundaries, and you pull them aside, you have a private conversation, and you say, friend, when you did this, here's how I felt. It hurt me. It wounded me. I didn't appreciate it. I would like to see if you could change. Could you please do that? So you're clear. Here's the new thing I want from you. I want you to act this way. I would like for you to speak this way. I would like for you to stop speaking that way. So you're clear. You're professional because you are a professional. You are. Of course you are. In whatever fields you're in, you don't want to be known as like this immature, little unprofessional child. You want to be professional. You want to be seen that way. Of course you do. And third, just be kind. I'll tell you what, you will win more with kindness than you will with meanness. I heard somebody else say it like this, that you win them with honey as opposed to vinegar. And then that takes me to the fifth thing about setting boundaries. The fifth skill is to live congruent with the boundaries that you've communicated. Now, this one is tricky, and I'm gonna go right into the tricky part. Can I? I hope you're okay with it. So if you're not ready for the tricky part, just stop the video right now, okay? But if you're ready for the tricky part, here goes. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people, and this seems to happen most in romantic relationships, where they say, "Well, I set the boundary, but they didn't respect it." And as a coach, I have to be holistic in my approach, and so I'll say, "Well, did you continue to be consistent and enforce the boundaries?" And they say, "Well, no, I didn't. I really love them." And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" And well, they're disrespectful. They're always, speaking nasty about me, always using profanity, yelling at me. And I told them I didn't want that. And they kept doing it. And you know what? I just forgave them. I just let them back in, and I just kind of, whatever. And now you're upset because they're not respecting your boundaries. But of course, you're teaching them how to treat you. You're teaching them how to treat you. And so it's not just enough to communicate a boundary. If they violate it, then what you've got to do is you've got to be congruent. Now, does that mean you cut them off? Well, I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. Maybe. Absolutely. Maybe. Right? There are people in my life I don't hold animosity towards. I don't hold resentment towards. But if they phone me, I'm not going to return their phone call. There are people in my life that I don't have any hatred to, because that would do me more damage than would damage them. But you can bet your next dollar that I'm not interested in having any ongoing relationship with. Why? Because they violated a boundary. That's it. And do you think I'm going to belittle myself and soil myself by needing them so much that I just, run after them and say, "Oh, no, don't worry about my boundaries. My boundaries don't matter." Of course not. Be congruent with the boundaries that you have communicated. Why? Because you're worth it. Because you deserve that. Because your heart matters, because your mindset matters, because who you are as a person matters. And so I'm going to just review the 5 most important skills, the top 5 skills for setting boundaries. Number 1, you got to know your personal boundaries. Number 2, ground yourself constantly. Remember the tree, just go deeper, 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 deeper. Number 3, notice the people and situations that drain you and that replenish you. Number 4, communicate those boundaries with respect, professionally, and with kindness. And then number 5, hold the line. Be consistent. Don't, be up and down like a toilet seat while a wet noodle. No, be strong. You got this. And we're with you. So listen, friends, thanks so much for tuning in. In Flourishing Workplace, which is one of our solutions where we help support workplace mental health, we do a lot of teaching and training on boundaries, to be honest. And if that is of interest to you, please just reach out. You can go to flourishingworkplace.com. We'd love to have a quick discovery session, find out what's going on for you guys and how we can maybe help. Maybe we're not a fit, but maybe we are. And maybe having somebody from the outside come in and support the process could transform the entirety of your workplace. And by the way, I'd love to hear your comments below, from this video and from the things that I've thought. I don't necessarily think I've got it all right when it comes to boundaries. I'm learning too. But I sure would love to hear what you loved about this video, and even if you got areas where you disagree, because that is useful information and feedback for me too. Thank you so much for tuning in, and please tune in for our next episode. Take care.